More than a year ago, Turkey proposed buying dozens of F-16 fighter jets from the U.S. as a compromise to an F-35 deal that was scrapped back in 2019. U.S. President Joe Biden voiced public support for the F-16 sale, citing its importance to Turkey's and NATO's defenses. But the deal encountered numerous legislative roadblocks in Congress. Now the final hurdle seems to have been lifted, paving the way for the sale. According to Anadolu Agency, which obtained a draft of a U.S. defense bill, previous amendments attached to the sale of the F-16s to Turkey have been dropped. The amendments had imposed several restrictions on the sale, including a prohibition of using the fighter jets to violate Greek airspace. Turkey had opposed the amendments, saying it would not accept any restrictions and hinted it could look elsewhere for fighter jets. Tensions between Turkey and Greece have risen this year over Athens' continued militarization of islands in the Aegean and maritime disputes in the energy-rich Eastern Mediterranean. And now to discuss the latest on the F-16 sale to Turkey, joining me now from Istanbul is Rich Alpson. He is a geopolitical consultant at the Washington Institute. And Ali Demirdaş, he is a political analyst based in Atlanta, Georgia. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. So, Rich, is this a big win for Turkey? Do you think the sale of the F-16s to Ankara will finally go through?
I think that's premature, unfortunately, Aisha. I'm a big fan of the F-16 sale. I think it's a win-win for a number of different reasons, for NATO, for U.S. industry, and for the Turkish air power. But I think what we saw this week with the provisions being dropped from the NDAA was simply putting more time on the clock, so to speak, to use a sports analogy, because there's still a process that has to occur between the executive branch and Congress, whereby the sale is formally notified, and that hasn't happened yet. So until that happens, and until, frankly, some of the people in Congress, the committee chairs and ranking members of the relevant committees, there's 4 that really matter, until they weigh in and say they're willing to support us, we just have more time on the clock. We don't actually have points on the board.
So are you as cautious as Rich? I mean, it is yet to be approved by the Senate, but what are the hurdles standing in the way, you think?
I agree with Rich. There is a tremendous amount of resistance in U.S. Congress against anything related to Turkey, particularly among the Democrat ranks. Senator Menendez and Pallone are spearheading the movement against Turkey. But I am a little bit more optimistic, given that the State Department and the President Biden, they are more lenient towards Turkey, given the fact that the U.S. needs allies more than ever. The U.S. cannot ignore the importance of Turkey in the region. Therefore, I am cautious but still optimistic for 2023.
As you've just mentioned, prominent critic of Turkey, Senator Menendez, who oversees U.S. arms sales, repeated his objection to the sale of F-16s to Turkey. Here is what he said on Twitter right after the amendment was lifted. He says, contrary to some claims, NDAA is not a win for Turkey. This is just one of many tools we have at our disposal in the Senate to deal with arms sales. So, Rich, what are other tools he's talking about here?
Well, the primary tool would be the review period that's required once formal notification of a sale. There's this complicated bureaucratic dance that goes on between a buying country, the United States industries that might sell a product, and then the government. There's a letter of request, and then there's a letter of offer and acceptance. But one of the key parts with regards to Congress is when the State Department formally notifies Congress that it intends to send this sale for approval. Then there's a period, I believe it's 30 days, for review by the Senate and to put a hold on it if really they think that there's anything untowards about it. So that's the major tool. If when the State Department formally notifies that sale, Senator Menendez or anyone else puts a hold on it, then the sale will essentially halt at that point. Although I should point out, that's sort of a soft stop. Some people think that the Senate can actually sort of veto the sale. That's not what happens. What happens is when one of those key senators puts a halt on it, then it has to go to a full vote. And then the vote has to be either against the sale, and it can only be overturned by a veto, sort of a veto-proof majority if President Biden wants to press on that. Or if it passes that there's enough people that support it, then it'll go. But there'll be a showdown. That's what this means. I think what Senator Menendez is saying is whatever the NDAA says, that when the State Department notifies the sale, he'll put a hold on it, and then it'll be brought to a vote.
So, Adi, what role do special interest and lobby groups play when it comes to relations between Ankara and Washington, both in a positive and negative way? I mean, how much influence do they have?
They have tremendous amount of influence over Congress. We are used to anti-Turkish approach by the Armenian and the Greek lobbyists, but now we are seeing more and more Indian lobbies, as well as the, in quotes, pro-Kurdish lobbies going against the, trying to undermine the Turkish-American relations. They have, like I said, they have tremendous amount of influence in Congress. But again, I would like to point out that the State Department and President Biden have come to the realization that Turkey is such an important ally for the United States, not only in the Middle East, but in the greater Eurasian context, that they have to find a way to convince Congress that Turkish-American relations have to be mended. So that's what I'm hoping that is going to happen in 2023.
So, Rich, how hard do you think President Biden worked to convince U.S. lawmakers?
Well, I don't think the showdown's come yet. So I have not seen evidence that President Biden has invested a lot of political capital yet in trying to convince Senator Menendez or anyone else. And timing matters, right? So I think he will wait and then try to find something, I think, frankly, in domestic terms that will be appealing to Senator Menendez or his constituents, so that, because he's got donors and he's got constituents for whom this is an important issue, they'll have to see some gain on some other issue. I just wanted to say that the whole thing is very reminiscent. I was going through some declassified documents from the State Department annals. They publish histories, the State Department historian does, of President Ford in 1975 writing a letter to the Turkish prime minister at the time saying, look, we really want to sell you weapons, but unfortunately I have this big Congress problem and I have to get the timing right. I have to wait until the next round of elections is done and some of the political pressure is eased. So this is really not a new thing. Presidents have wanted to work with Turkey for a long time, and Congress, for a number of different reasons, likes to put pressure and leverage against that. So President Biden's going to have to work through that. I don't think he has yet. But when the State Department notifies, we'll see how much he's willing to put his shoulder to the wheel.
So, Adi, if we get back to the bill, what do you make of its wording? It seems to be carefully crafted, so neither Turkey nor Greece feels disrespected.
Yeah. I mean, the letter aims at appeasing both sides. On one hand, there is this NATO ally, which is very important in the context of American politics, and on the other hand, there is the constituents, especially the Armenian and the Greek constituents, that are very against and leery about the sales, F-16 sales. So the letter was crafted in a balanced manner so that there's the ally and there's the constituents. So in order not to offend neither side, the language basically reflects that. But I want to emphasize the fact that in recent months, the American foreign policy, we have witnessed the backtracking with regards to Saudi Arabia, with regards to Venezuela. So I don't see why this F-16 situation is resolved in favor of Turkey in the coming months.
So, Rich, how do you read it? I mean, does the defense bill openly suggest that the conditions attached to the sale of F-16s to Ankara have been lifted, or does it still maintain a vague stance about overflights and Turkey's operations against the terror organizations?
Well, I think, in my view, we should realize that those provisions that were dropped from the NDA were truly extraordinary. I mean, it's not that it never happens, but it's rare that an ally will have specific conditions placed in our Defense Authorization Act about how they can use equipment that we would sell to them in a commercial sale. So the fact that they were dropped is good news, but this doesn't mean the road is clear. It just means the extraordinary hurdle was removed. So, and I admire Ali's optimism. I want to stay optimistic as well. And I agree. Look, the Biden administration has shown some agility, right? So when it has found itself in need of cutting some deals, despite what it said in the past. It's shown the ability to put some work in. So I'm going to take that optimism and go with that. But again, the path is not clear because Senator Menendez is still firmly, and the other committee chairs, firmly in the way of this when it flows. So I would like to see, as a fan of NATO and as a fan of this bilateral alliance, I would like to see the administration doing some groundwork now and having some of its national security folks, maybe a Jake Sullivan or a John Feiner, go talk with Congress and say, look, this is important, and let's figure out what the deal space is. That's going to have to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And until then, again, I'll take some of Ali's optimism, but it's too early to have much more than that.
So, Ali, it seems Senator Menendez is adamant in confronting Turkey. What's the reason behind his animosity?
I mean, first of all, he is married to an Armenian lady who is anti-Turkish at the same time. Senator Menendez, to my disappointment, acts like a pawn of Armenian and a Greek lobby. I believe that the American interest lies in the fact that the U.S. and Turkey must work together to resolve the problems across Eurasia. But unfortunately, the lobbies in Washington have been pushing, to destroy the bilateral relations between the two countries. But again, I am a little bit more optimistic because given the fact that the geopolitical structure across Eurasia has changed against the United States, the U.S. government plus the Congress will find a way to work with Turkey.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.